immediate past administration of late President Muhammadu Buhari made several attempts to foist some form of regulation on various social media platforms in Nigeria, albeit with limited success. At the time in question, the government anchored its reason for seeking a regulated social media space on what it identified as widespread misuse by clout chasers who were determined to heat up the polity by all means through ethnically motivated incitement. Consequently, Nigeria's social media space rapidly became a boiling pot of inter-ethnic resentment and name-calling in the build-up to the 2023 general election, and became a predictable outlet for a lot of the violence that took place, particularly in Lagos and a few other parts of southern Nigeria. Our next conversation is with Chude, who is an author and policy affairs analyst. He joins us now to look at the possible factors behind the resurgence of the scenario in the build-up to the 2027 general election, why everyone should be concerned, as well as the perceived widening gulf between President Bola Tinubu's style of governance and the fundamental needs and demands of the Nigerian people. Good morning, and you're welcome back again to the Morning Show on Saturday.
It's always a pleasure.
Beautiful Saturday.
It's
Thanks,
always a pleasure. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about issues that I'm sure that, like many Nigerians, you too will be concerned. They're two-pronged. We'll come back to the aspect of state of things, state of affairs arising from the style of governance of President Bola Tinubu. But of course, more importantly, will be, the vitriol that everybody is battling with, particularly on social media, the division, the growing gap, the widening gap among Nigerians, and the sort of narratives, hate-filled narratives that seems to be fueling our march towards the 2027 elections. Is that what you feel too? Do you feel that far worse than what we experienced in the build-up to the 2023 elections and the immediate aftermath? Do you think that we have not learnt any lessons and it looks like things might become a lot worse if we don't rein in those who seem to be promoting division, particularly on social media?
Yeah, I was just looking at the topic of this conversation, resurgence of ethnic politics towards 2027 polls. Yeah. Resurgence, there's a presupposition. It presupposes, a fact that this surge of ethnic politics occurs at especially particular periods in the life of this country towards an election. So what that tells you is that there are people who are motivated by politics, essentially, because it's about election. Yeah. And it's about resurgence of, very negative sentiments, but always during the context of elections. So it's about the politics. Yeah. And the people behind politics are usually the politicians. They are the ones that play politics. They are the ones that lose in the political game. They are the ones that gain. So what tells you is that you can isolate the people behind this first. That's the first thing. So what you have on social media are armies of these people who are, pushing certain agenda. Because you see, when certain crimes take place, for instance, these crimes are executed by people, whether it's electoral crime or other crimes. But behind the scenes are masterminds of the people who perpetrate this crime. And they're usually very powerful people. So when the state goes against the people who have perpetrated these crimes visibly, the people that are behind it visibly, they catch them, sometimes they incarcerate them. That is, if they're unlucky enough, not to be released on the orders, from those behind them. Yeah. But the people behind it, usually very powerful and influential people, always get away with these crimes. It's time to begin to go after the people that are doing this. The people that are, on social media that are making all this kind of disparaging remarks against people on the basis of their ethnic group, on the basis of their religion, on the basis of their geopolitical locations and all of that, are not the prime benefits or beneficiaries,
they're probably being
of
used.
this. They are all being used, obviously. So money is being funneled towards that because they have nothing,
At stake.
Yeah, at stake. They have nothing at stake, but they are acting on behalf of those. So it is good you want to go after all of these people because we have laws, in the country. We have always made that argument. But as you do that, you must also remember that if you want to get to the bottom of this, you must go after the people on whose behalf they are doing this. You can trace them. It's easy. You just get on, they know how to, the law enforcement authorities know how to get at them.
Easy?
If there's a will. It's always about, if you understand, it's always, but don't forget again that we are talking about a country, a state that is weakened. The Nigerian state is weak. There's no English that you speak that would, say anything contrary. The Nigerian state is very weak. It is the weakness of the state that allows certain actions that happen within the territory of Nigeria. Terrorist activities, banditry, unknown gunmen, and all manners of antisocial, deviant behavior that goes on in this country unchecked. Because not just that the state is weak, but the institutions of the Nigerian state are exceedingly very weak. And they are not able to rise up to meet up with the occasion. And that's why you have all of these things that are going on. We talked about the build-up, the resurgence of this towards the 2027 election, but there was an election in 2023. And in your opener, you also talked about all of these things that manifested in 2023 election. And it was good that people were having that conversation of Simon Ekpa, because in a way it's related to. He's been on social media causing all kinds of problems for the country. He's lucky that he got 6 years. He's just lucky, because...
you think that you should have gotten more than that?
You should have. If you were supporting, there were people that were beheaded.
True.
In parts of this country.
Absolutely.
A woman and her children. This is somebody who had the right to live. And then you are giving credence to that kind of thing and supporting it and all that. So in a sane society, you don't support such things. But we also had this also. You talked about 2023, the elections, and so everything that happened on social media. We saw it. We saw the actors. We saw all of the people that were involved in it. How many of them have been interdicted? How many of those people have been arrested? Some of them are also playing a role in government and in governance in this country. And so when you want to go after people like Simon Ekpa, please do, by all means, make sure that they get the worst kind of punishments that are available. But you also remember that we also here have locally people that are being protected, who are also influential, who have also done the same thing. Perhaps not to the extent that he did, financing, purchases of bombs and weapons and all of that. But when you remember what happened in Rwanda, where 10,000 people were being killed on a daily basis, then you will realize the magnitude and the magnanimity, the magnitude of what is going on and the dangers of this kind of thing that we saw in the 2023 election. We must not allow that to continue. And that the fact that you have people who, openly come out to preach, this kind of irredentism, this kind of, it doesn't matter against whom. Once it's against a human person, because there are certain things that are inalienable to the human person, and that is the right to life. Yeah. It's inalienable. Absolutely. So what you do is that you threaten the life, the right to life of a person and an entire people on the basis of what? On the basis of politics. Look, military governance is an aberration to democracy. We have always said it. And they must always be kept at bay because they have no business playing a role in the affairs of this country in terms of administering the state and all that. Their job is restricted by the Constitution and they should remain there. But there are certain things that happened even under them that will give you an idea that the political class in this country has been very responsible and very divisive when it comes to the issues of governance and their responsibilities to the Nigerian people. There are some things that happened under a military dispensation, as bad as they were, that might no longer happen under the present circumstance, polluted circumstance that we have today. It was possible to have a Muslim from the north as military administrator of Lagos State, there was not a problem. Have an Igbo person as Minister of Administrator of Lagos State, we saw it. There was no problem. You could have an NS Adeleye as military administrator in Rivers State. There was no problem. You had somebody from Cross River State, for instance, being moved to Sokoto, a Christian, as a military administrator. There was no problem.
But right now,
can we have that kind of situation again in this country? People will go up in arms, because for them, under the military, civilian dispensation, you cannot have that kind of situation.
Can I come in here?
Yes.
Well, that's also because, under a military dispensation, you don't have choice. And I'll connect that to now, because right now in Rivers State, the administrator of Rivers State, the sole administrator, is not from the state.
Yes.
The people don't have a choice, but nobody is nobody's up in arms about where he comes from, because when you don't have choice, right? Politics is very personal, and representation also matters. But I also want us to, because we've spoken a lot about this resurgence, and 2023, we've spoken a lot about that. Yeah. And I know that I'm essentially a child of the internet, and I know that in the past 2 years, the amount of tribal bigotry that I have faced on the internet, I have not faced
it's horrible.
In my whole life, and just in 2 years.
It's horrible. Yeah.
And about yourself.
Myself, yes. And people on the internet also are not sure what tribe I'm from, so I get it from all sides. People assume Adeso as a Yoruba name, and then some people know where I assume my last name is from. And I've gotten bigotry from all sides in the past 2 years. It's been fantastically illuminating. But a lot of it isn't necessarily politically driven, which is where I'm actually coming with this. I believe it's quite worrying, actually, is that you're seeing young people engage in this by virtue of just the vitriol that comes with online communication. You can even see people being that vitriolic about musicians or the movies they like. If you're Team Davido, then the other team must die. Yeah. However, when it comes to these type of sentiments, people can die. And that's the scary thing. When it comes to tribal sentiments, this vitriolic way of communicating has real life consequences. As you said, there's a right to life. Yeah. Also, very importantly, 80 million Nigerians, it's been said that 80 million Nigerians are unemployed. Yeah. Because I want us to tie this now in with governance. Do you think that part of why it's gotten so bad now is because we have millions of people who are unemployed, underemployed, and poor, who have nothing to do but sit on their phones all day?
There are all manners of reasons. It's not just one reason. It's obviously multi-dimensional.
You gave one reason. You've given the reason of politics. Yes. But can you illuminate other reasons?
Obviously, idleness. Again, the devil under his workshop. He will always provide, work for the idle mind. The crisis in this country, the violence that we are seeing all over the country, in as much as, yes, you want to go after the kidnappers, you want to go after the terrorists and all of that, but there's a base that is responsible for that, and that is the general poverty in the land. You cannot run away from the poverty, in the country too. That it is from there, because, for instance, if you want to recruit people, you don't go and recruit somebody that has a job, that has something meaningful to do. You go to the person that has no stake within the polity. And when you have not been able to educate a person sufficiently, and imbue him with certain virtues also, and then he has some level of economic empowerment. What you're doing is to provide, make him a cannon fodder for use by all manners of devious elements for whatever expediency. So these are some of the things that are happening. So I also agree that it's also important to look at some of these issues and address these issues. There is general frustration and anger at the failure of leadership over the years in this country. And the question you ask yourself is, why is it that these acts of terrorism only are endemic to countries with a certain level of economic growth and development? If you look at all over the world, you don't have that in Europe, you don't have that in China, you don't have that in Japan, you don't have that in many other parts of the world, except in countries that are poverty prone and where you also have bad governance. So there's a connection with that also, when it comes to that. And I also agree with you about the internet, even not just, issues of ethnicity or religion and all that. These things are there. You also have other mundane issues like arguing over followership of maybe one, social media influencer or the other. So you have that. Then there's also, of course, the level of the elevation of the mind. People who engage in things like this are people who, have not imbibed certain virtues. Again, the kind of home they are from. All of these things are connected. There is a lot of, interconnectedness. The kind of home they come from, the kind of values they have, that you will look at yourself and you think as a human being and you think that you are different from the other person. What makes you different as a person? The circumstances of our birth is purely accidental. We played no role in choosing where we are going to be born, how we are going to be born, who our parents are going to be, and what religion they are going to come from. Absolutely, it was not our choice. We just found ourselves in the world, and that is it. And then you're also dealing with other people who also have the same, qualities that you have as a person. So what makes you different? What makes you better than the other person? And so, again, there is the issue of lack of education and awareness. All of these things are, like I said, they are connected, so many things together. If you are sufficiently educated and you have imbibed a sense of humanity and humanism, you will realize that you are no different from the other person. And so you show empathy to people depending on their circumstances and all that. We do not see this. So there's a lot of good, virtues in the internet. There's also a lot of evil on the internet. Because with the internet, you can do a lot, you can create a lot, you can, look for job opportunities and all that, and a lot of people have benefited from that. Sometimes you can find a little bit of romance on the internet. But internet also, you also find yourself in a situation where even this romance leads to your demise. If care is not if it's not done properly, and people keep on warning about that. You have pedophiles there. You have angels, you have saints, you have all manners of people. So as much as, yes, we talk about this, and it is, you see, when we even talk about it, otherwise you would have said, okay, let the wheat and the chaff grow together. But the thing is that the fruits of the chaff is dangerous to the society. For you to allow that to continue, unabatedly, and that's why laws are promulgated. Yes, some of us, in the civil society space are also wary of how you regulate social media, how you regulate the internet, because of the dangers that a government might be doing it to protect itself and to protect its officials from criticisms. These criticisms are important. It is what makes democracy thrive.
Have we seen that with the Cyber Crimes Act?
Yeah, of course. People have also been complaining about that because, the thing about that, about things in life sometimes is that when you give some people an inch, they take a yard. Give them a yard, they take a mile. So sometimes, when a government wants to protect itself also, some of these laws are also promulgated. And for instance, you also find a situation where in the past few years in this country, government officials would always talk about the virtues of respecting the media, the journalists and all that. They always give these admonitions and the rest. And that is the truth, because there is nobody that would dare to come out to say, look, the media could be, not even, the staunchest, person who, hates the media. He will not do that. He will have to be politically correct. He has to talk about the goodness of the media and what you can achieve with a responsible media. But there's always a caveat when they talk about that. Okay. You must discharge your functions responsibly. We also know, even being in the media space, that some people in the media space also misuse the powers that they have, sometimes for purposes of blackmail. We cannot, these things happen. But it's an excuse sometimes that they use also to stop people from expressing themselves in the media space.
Let me come in there, and I thank you for the dimension that you have brought into discourse. But then, and I like the fact that you use the part of good component of the social media and the bad part of it. So my question to you will be, and I'm trying to play the devil's advocate, will be, at what point does an average Nigerian cross the line in expressing strong preference, even if it is ethnically biased, when it comes to political choices? For example, let's say that there are three important candidates seeking to be the president of the country. And in your estimation, you think that any of the three can rule brilliantly.
Yeah.
And then, but you think that, okay, if only three of them are good, why don't I choose my brother, in quote.
Yeah.
The same way, perhaps, that you will say if you were a resident in the UK and you were white, and then all of a sudden you saw that a lady, a British lady from Nigeria, Kemi Badenoch, is the leader of the Conservative Party, and you're not comfortable with that, not because you hate blacks, but because you just think that I would rather, in what I consider to be my country, where we're in the majority, I would rather that I have a white person. And then you move to either Labour or to the Reform Party, not because you have anything at all, not because you will want, they're your friends, you will, it is just your strong preference based on either your racial, inclination or ethnic, preferences. At what point does that become bad if you have to apply that in Nigeria?
Yeah, again, people have a right to be biased. It's a right.
It's democracy.
It's democracy. People have a right to not love the president or a governor.
Based on where he's from?
No, not based on where he's from, generally.
Generally.
But you have a duty to respect the office of the president and the governor. So there are rights that you have. That's why you're a human being. We don't all see alike. But you see, my problem with, ethnic politics, religious-based politics, or geopolitics in the country, for instance, is the fact that it robs us of the ability to discern the very best among contending, rivals in an electoral process. If you want to look at people and judge them on the basis, on the prism of these parochial sentiments, you will miss the mark, perhaps. Now you can, exercise that right. But you see, when you now go on the social space and you begin to denigrate a people for who they are,
that's the bad part. For
the language they speak, for the religion that they espouse, then you are going above. You are acting beyond the pale. You are doing things, and in fact, you get to a level where you begin to commit a crime, against the state and against the people, a crime against humanity. We must not, and we must go back to Rwanda, because this thing happened in recent history. It's over going to 30 years or so. A horrible situation. Neighbors. And the thing about Rwanda is that they're all from the same ethnic stock. So it's not about ethnicity. And that the stratification that we had in Rwandan society was a social stratification, economic one. Tutsis and Hutus. It was based on the ability, on the, the possession, and the economic wherewithal of each of the groups. The Tutsis were the more affluent group. The Hutus were those from a more humble, background. That's what this whole thing was all about. The same language, the same.
It was a colonial
so the same language they spoke, the same ethnic stock, and yet we had this kind of chaos on the basis of what? And like I said, 10,000 people are being killed on a daily basis. So these are the things that we have a responsibility as a people to educate, and that's what the media should be doing. And in fairness to media, that's why when we were talking about it, the conversation was not about the conventional media. The conversation was not about you guys in the studio or some of the newspaper houses or the radio houses. No, they have done excellently well when it comes to things like this. They have discouraged it, they have condemned it, and they have admonished people about such things. It's our social media where the kind of regulation and the ethos that you people, the media, the conventional media brings to bear in the practice of their profession is not there. So that is
do you think
wild,
that the
wild
social
west.
media of today is the radio of Rwanda of 30, how many years ago?
No, absolutely. And it could have been worse if we had this level of, fine, exactly. Fine, look, the conventional media in Rwanda did not stand up to be counted. They were part of it. They were propagating all of this hate amongst their people. So they were part of, and that was why when the tribunal, is in Arusha, when it sat, a lot of people who should have known better,
that's true,
by virtue of who they were and the profession they professed, were also interdicted and were also, judged guilty of having played one or two roles in what happened.
That's true.
And then again, the thing about it is that there's a herd mentality. Once you build a people, you whip them up to such an emotional state that reason takes flight. And that is the danger. You might be the most educated. If care is not taken, you might be the most educated that people respect. And then when you find yourself in this situation, a different law takes place, the law of the jungle, the law of the mob. And then you find yourself flowing with the tide.
I really like that you brought this out, because I want to ask about the responsibility of people to counter these type of narratives, because oftentimes it seems that members in government, as you said, the key players, they're not necessarily funding the ethnic bigotry. However, they're laughing along. Do you believe that there's a responsibility by virtue of their position to not even be neutral, but to counter these negative narratives?
There are people in government. And when I say government, I'm not just talking about whether it's federal government, the states, and there are people there that are funding this. They might not be doing it on behalf of the government. They might not be doing it on behalf of the state, on behalf of their institutions, but there are people with ties. You see, for them, listen, when former President Olusegun Obasanjo made that statement, it was a very fundamental statement. When he said, I think he was, at the airport, one of those trips he made, and they were asking about politics. He said it's a do or die affair. And people thought he was joking. For the Nigerian politician, it's not about Obasanjo now. Yeah. For the Nigerian politician, you remember what Jonathan said a few days ago about politicians, being betrayers and all that, backstabbers and all that. Okay. I hadn't come into the studio by then. Yeah. But this was what I said, this is the character of the typical politician, in this country, most unfortunately. It's why a country like Nigeria is where it is today. We all know that Nigeria has no business flirting with the kind of poverty, multidimensional poverty that we have. It is simply because of the failure of leadership. Leadership must lead by example. We must see by the things they say, by the way they think, by their posture to the people itself, as what people will say, the body language. All of these things are important. A leader must show intolerance for any form of bigotry that takes place in this country. He must be able to make statements to that effect.
Let's round this off in the few seconds that we have left on your thoughts on, the style of governance of the president, given the way that people are now reacting to the proposed tax, fuel tax, 5%, fuel tax and everything.
And just to add into what you're saying, also considering what's come out about how the FEC approved funding from the federal government has been split, with less than 3% going to the whole Southeast region and about 2.7% going to the Northeast region.
Very quickly.
Well, I was telling somebody yesterday that sometimes when it rains, it pours. So for Nigerians, it's a lot of rain pouring. They have faced all sorts. They've been buffeted from all sides by increase in electricity tariff, increase in, phone calls. When you make phone calls, you send text messages, all of these things. Yeah. And so when the government is saying that they have done what they've met revenue target, from 14 point something billion naira to about 20 point something billion naira or so, or more than that, or 40 point something billion naira. You should also know that it's your money. It's part of the calls that you make, is part of the bills that you're paying. So many ways. It's not just because, and the good thing about it was they said it was from non-oil revenue. Yeah. So it's your money, it's our money. But then the issue is this: yes, we understand that the country has been in dire strait before the advent of this administration. We understand that certain things needed to be done. But your people are facing unmitigated difficulties. And people ask this question, how are Nigerians surviving? And you just smile and you say, well, by God's grace and all that. But the reality is that too many Nigerians are not surviving. Yes. It's just that we do not have data, we do not have statistics in our hospitals and so on. So you talk about the style of governance. It's not just the president's style of governance. It's the attitude of the political class in this country. It's their ostentatious, and sometimes reprehensible and abominable life that they live in the midst of so much poverty. People see this every day, and there's no attempt to regulate their public, profile, their expenditure and all that, so that people can see that, look, when they tell us to tighten our belt, we'll understand, because they have tightened their belts, because they have brought down the constituency allowances that they are getting by 60%, because we have seen that some of the cars they are driving now, they are no longer driving state-of-the-art foreign cars. They are now driving local cars. They are now doing some other things and all that. It's how countries like China, grew by making sacrifices. That sacrifice, and it's not just something that started even from 1999. It has been there from the Shehu Shagaru period. That tighten your belt started in 1979. Today, about 40 years down the line, Nigerians are still tightening their belts.
We really have to run. Chude, I want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
As usual, for your brilliant submissions. Thank you indeed for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.